Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents How to Survive Change You Didn't Ask For. Bounce back, find calm in chaos, and reinvent yourself by M.J. Ryan. Narrated by Rosemary, Benson. Publisher's Note: in this audio edition, you will hear references to visual elements present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Change, when it comes, cracks everything open. Dorothy Allison. 1. Welcome to permanent whitewater. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. Charles Darwin. These are challenging times. If you're listening to this, chances are you're confronting some change you never asked for. Perhaps a loss of job, or some dream. Maybe you have to learn to work in new ways, or find a new place to live. I'm sorry if it's difficult. I'm hoping that you'll find the support and the practices you need to successfully ride the wave of this change, whatever it may be. Take comfort that you're not alone. In my work as a thinking partner, I spend a lot of time speaking to people in all walks of life, from the CEO of a joint venture in Saudi Arabia to a stay-at-home mom who needs to enter the workforce. From where I sit, whether they are searching for a job, looking for funding for a startup, trying to stay relevant at age 60 in a large corporation, dealing with lost savings, coping with a big new job that has 100 direct reports, struggling to get donations for a nonprofit, or fearing losing their home due to unemployment, people of all ages and walks of life are scrambling to deal with vast changes happening today in every part of the world. Take the publishing industry, where I've spent 30 years, first as an editor of a weekly newspaper, then as an editor of monthly magazines, a book publisher, and now, for the past 7 years, an author. None of the companies I worked for are still in existence. Neither are the distributors. One of my dear friends, a top writer at the Washington Post, just took a buyout because the newspaper can't afford to pay top talent. Even the most prestigious papers are drowning in red ink. How we create, distribute, market, and promote media products is completely different from even a few years ago. Where it is all heading, we truly have no idea. Phil Bronstein, former publisher of the San Francisco Chronicle, declared recently, "Anybody who professes to be able to tell you what things will be like in 10 years is on some kind of drug." And that's only one corner of the evolving big picture. In 2006, creativity expert Sir Ken Robinson, speaking at the TED conference, Technology, Entertainment, Design, stated, "We have no idea of what's going to happen in the future. No one has a clue about what the world will be like in even 5 years. The only thing any of us can know for certain is that life will continue to change at a rapid pace because the world has gotten more complex and interdependent." Organizational consultant Peter Vail calls this permanent whitewater, referring to a time of ongoing uncertainty and turbulence. We can't see exactly where these changes are headed, or where the submerged rocks are, yet when we're tossed out of the boat, we want to make sure to swim, not sink. Experienced rafters know they're going to get dumped out at some point. The difference between them and the rest of us is that they're prepared to get bounced out and to recover swiftly. They expect the whitewater, and so should we. Have you ever encountered that life stress list that rates changes, such as moving, death of a spouse, getting married, etc.? The folks who created that list in the 1960s estimate that life is 44% more stressful now than it was 50 years ago. And they came up with that estimate, I have no idea how, before the 2008 global meltdown. I'm not sure we even want to know the new number. We find ourselves in uncharted waters. How do you cope with the fall-off in business of your tiling company due to the implosion of the housing industry, as an acquaintance was telling me about yesterday? Or what should my 23-year-old client do about not being able to drive to work because she can't afford the gas because she gets paid a pittance at her wonderful social services job? What should my husband's 55-year-old friend do now that his job has been rendered obsolete because people aren't buying CDs anymore thanks to the proliferation of downloadable music? What should a 60-year-old friend of mine do about being upside down on her house? What should a dentist I know do about the huge debt he's carrying from paying for rehab for his son? Which is the more stable situation? The job that my client has had for 15 years with a company that has just been sold to a conglomerate and is experiencing a shrinking profit margin, or the opportunity with a startup with seemingly greater risks and rewards? When people present me with such dilemmas, I don't pretend to know the answers. I'm not a crystal ball reader. Nor do I understand every industry trend, or how a given company should be positioning itself. What I do know a lot about, and what I can help you to do, too, is to develop the necessary mindsets and actions to adapt well to whatever changes come your way. Knowing that you need to change, or even wanting to change, isn't enough. Without rewiring your thinking and knowing what actions to take, all you get is wish and want, and often stuckness. I want to help you actually develop the ability to adapt, to get up to speed with the attitudes and skills required to make the changes that life and work require. Why do I place such emphasis here? Because the ability to adapt is, as far as I can tell, the key indicator of success in these turbulent times. It's the capacity to be flexible and resourceful in the face of ever-changing conditions, to respond in a resilient and productive manner when change is required. Another name for it is agility. In a recent McKinsey survey, 89% of the more than 1,500 executives surveyed worldwide ranked agility as very or extremely important to their business success. And 91% said it has become more important over the past 5 years. According to Webster's, agile means the ability to move with an easy grace, having a quick, resourceful, and adaptable character. Webster's has it a bit wrong, I'd say. I don't think it has anything to do with character. It's just that some of us already know how to adapt easily. The rest of us need to learn quickly. Otherwise, you'll end up spinning your wheels, complaining, or contracting in fear when faced with change. Aikido masters say that to be successful in life, 3 kinds of mastery are required. Mastery with self, which means understanding our feelings and thoughts and how to regulate and direct them. Mastery with others, which means being able to create shared understanding and shared action. And mastery with change, which means having the capacity to adapt easily without losing our center, our values, talents, and sense of purpose. This book is focused on the third. Although mastery with change requires a certain amount of mastery with self as well, it is my hope that as you go through the changes life brings your way, aided by what you learn here, you become a change master an expert at riding the monster waves of change. This mastery begins with understanding the process of adaptability. Conversations with my colleagues Esther Laspisa and Donna Markova have helped me to understand that the process looks like this. We do this process naturally when a change is small. Say you're planning to go out to dinner tonight with a friend and she calls at the last minute and cancels. You think to yourself, well, that's out. Accept. What else could I do this evening? Expand. Then you go do it. Take action. It's when changes are big, painful, confusing, and/or disruptive of your hopes and dreams that it's hard to see there is a process at work. Being aware of the process can help us avoid getting stuck along the way, suffering needlessly, and using up precious time. For we're not just being asked to adapt these days, but to do it speedily. What differentiates the change masters I know from other folks is how quickly they can go through the process. Okay, that's over. Now what? They expect to bounce back and are able to see the opportunities that change presents. Fortunately, once you become conscious of how the process of adaptation works, you too can face future changes with greater confidence and swiftness, rather than getting hung up on the rocks of denial, anger, or helplessness. Want further incentive to learn adaptability? Experts in mind-body medicine have shown that people who are master adapters live longer and healthier lives than others. How come? Because they counterbalance the stress hormones that wear down our bodies with positive attitudes and behaviors that release feel-good hormones, which restore balance to our cells, organs, and tissue. That's why many health experts define health itself as adaptability. These positive attitudes and behaviors are at the heart of this book. In order to help you learn to adapt gracefully, I begin with 7 truths about change, which teach you that change is inevitable and explain why it can be such a challenge. The rest of the book takes you through the adaptability process outlined a moment ago. Accept the change, expand your options, take action, and offers the attitudes and behaviors you need in order to move successfully through each phase. The final part is called Strengthen Your Adaptability, which is a process of noticing what you've learned and recording it so you can use it again when needed, which, of course, you will, because adapting to life is a never-ending process. You may be at one or another of these phases as you pick up this book. As I always say, do the practices and take the advice that seems most helpful to you. Everyone is distinct, confronting unique challenges and in need of different support. Whatever you're facing, I want to encourage you to use this book as a life preserver, enabling you to better understand and navigate the shifts that change will require in you. As you go through this journey, you'll learn the following: our body's physical and emotional reactions to change, the mental and emotional qualities of a change master, why self-care is crucial, how to live with uncertainty and to respond in as positive and healthy a way as possible, how to identify new opportunities, how to use what's happening to align even more with your talents and values. As with my previous books, this book incorporates insights from brain science, organizational and positive psychology, spirituality, and my own brand of New England pragmatism. In this book, you'll learn all the tools, techniques, attitudes, and behaviors I know of to be a change master. I'll offer many examples from my work with professional thinking partners, PTP, a firm that helps people recognize and develop their unique talents and use them to maximize individual success and collaboration with others. PTP has worked with tens of thousands of individuals in dozens of large and small companies, nonprofits, and governmental agencies around the world. You'll meet PTP's lead consultant, Donna Markova, Ph.D., who has taught me many of the approaches and techniques you'll find here. And you'll meet many of my clients and friends, in disguised form to protect their confidentiality, unless I use their full names. People just like you, dealing with the challenges of life as it is rapidly evolving. As we face today's realities and try to adapt, it's not surprising that we may need support. Who among us took a class on how to cope with change? In the past, changes happened more slowly, and our need to adapt was much, much less. Here's just one example of the acceleration of change. Starting at AD 1, it took 1,500 years for the amount of information in the world to double. It's now doubling at the rate of once every 2 years. No wonder we're scrambling to keep up. What's puzzling about this absence of training in adaptability is that companies all know that their employees' capacity to change is one of the key factors in business success. According to the Strategic Management Research Center, for instance, the failure rate of mergers and acquisitions is as much as 60 to 70%. Why? Not because it's not a good idea to bring two organizations together to create efficiencies and synergies, but because the people in them fail to adapt to the changed circumstances. I was just speaking yesterday to a woman in a huge oil company who had been part of an effort to create a standardized process for gathering information across departments. She'd left to work on another project and discovered that 2 years and millions of dollars later, the effort had failed. Why? Because employees kept using the old system they knew rather than learn the new one. Examples of the lack of ability to change don't have to be that expensive or dramatic. They happen every single day, right where you live and work. I would say at least half of the folks I coach on a weekly basis are looking for help adapting to new positions or circumstances where they must drive results in a different way than they have before. The behaviors that have gotten them where they are today are simply not working. And these are all folks who have jobs. Those without work need even more support in learning new skills and attitudes. Resisting change wears down our bodies, taxes our minds, and deflates our spirits. We keep doing the things that have always worked before with depressingly diminishing results. We expend precious energy looking around for someone to blame, ourselves, another person, or the world. We worry obsessively. We get stuck in the past, lost in bitterness or anger. Or we fall into denial. Everything's fine, I don't have to do anything different. Or magical thinking. Something or someone will come along to rescue me from having to change. We don't want to leave the cozy comfort of the known and familiar for the scary wilderness of that which we've never experienced. And so we rail against it and stay stuck. When the environment changes, and we must therefore too, it's appropriate to complain, to take, in the words of Dr. Pamela Peeke, the BMW, bitch, moan, and whine, out for a little spin. But soon it's time to put it back in the driveway and get down to business. And that means developing adaptability. In a very real way, what is being asked of us now is no more or less than to become consciously aligned with what life has always required on this planet. In 1956, the father of stress research, Hans Selye, wrote in his seminal work, The Stress of Life. Life is largely a process of adaptation to the circumstances in which we exist. A perennial give and take has been going on between living matter and its inanimate surroundings, between one living being and another ever since the dawn of life in the prehistoric oceans. The secret of health and happiness lies in successful adjustment to the ever-changing conditions on this globe. The penalties for failure in this great process of adaptation are disease and unhappiness. My goal is to offer you a way to relate to the change you're facing with the least wear and tear and the greatest potential, not merely to survive, but to thrive during the greatest period of transformation humans have ever experienced. We are all being called on to stretch mentally, emotionally, and spiritually into the future. It's my hope that this book offers you both comfort and practical support as you take on this challenge. And may what you learn here help you become a change master. Top 10 Change Sinkholes. 1. Getting stuck in denial. 2. Becoming paralyzed by fear and/or shame. 3. Spending a lot of time and energy on blame and/or regret. 4. Believing there is nothing you can do. 5. Focusing on the problem rather than the solution. 6. Using only solutions that have worked in the past to solve new problems. 7. Yes-butting all options. 8. Not getting in touch with what gives you meaning and purpose. 9. Going it alone. 10. Resisting or refusing to learn new things because it takes extra effort. Don't worry. In this book, you'll learn how to avoid these danger zones and stay positively focused and moving forward. 2. 7 Truths About Change. Since we live in a changing universe, why do humans oppose change? If a rock is in the way, the root of the tree will change its direction. Even a rat will change its tactics to get a piece of cheese. Melvin B. Tolson. Here you learn the fundamentals of adaptability that will hold you in good stead, no matter what wave is heading your way. These understandings will allow you to accept the need to adapt and learn how to get your brain on your side. Or, more accurately, the 2 parts of your brain which are involved in change. With these truths in your hip pocket, you are well on your way to being able to surf the monster waves of change. Change truth number 1. Change is the one thing you can count on. Only in growth and change, paradoxically enough, is true security to be found. Anne Morrow Lindbergh. Christopher Hildreth owns a business installing high-end wood flooring. During the refinancing boom in this decade, his business grew to $4 million. As the economy has slowed, demand for his products has shrunk. Competitors are offering much lower prices, and customers have less spare cash to choose the high-end option, if they can afford new floors at all. This development has taken him totally by surprise. In an interview in the San Francisco Chronicle, he says, "I figured it would just roll along and I would do my estimates and the phone would ring. I would have thought that by now I'd be riding the crest of a wave." Contrast that response to my client Al's. When I asked him, the CEO of a real estate development company in Las Vegas, how he was doing in the downturn, he confided, "I knew the real estate boom couldn't go on forever, so I created a rainy day fund. I'm not only using it to tide me over, but to buy out troubled developers around town. Smart man, Al. He knows intuitively there is only one sure thing in life, that things will change. How and when, none of us know, but that everything will is absolutely guaranteed. The Buddha called this awareness the first noble truth, the fact that everything in life is impermanent. Fighting against that truth only causes us suffering, he taught, because it's fighting against reality. Accepting that truth diminishes our suffering because we're in alignment with the way life is. When we accept that the only thing constant is change, we aren't so taken by surprise when the change occurs. Night follows day, winter follows summer, the moon waxes and wanes. Change happens. I empathize with Christopher Hildreth because I, too, learned this lesson the hard way. Riding the wave of a couple of bestsellers as a book publisher, I kept expanding my company and had just bought a big new house when the largest returns in the industry rolled back through my door, leaving a deficit the company never could recover from. No matter how many predictions of future sales based on past sales we created, they were wrong because the whole industry was going through a game-changing shift. I wish I had planned for the boom not continuing forever. It would have prevented a lot of sleepless nights. Even though most of us can't know for sure when and how change will hit us, we can at least keep in our awareness the simple fact that it will, and at a more rapid pace than ever before in human history. Our work and personal lives will change, guaranteed, and we need to be ready with the appropriate attitudes and actions so that, like Al, we minimize the negative impacts and capitalize on the opportunities. When we are aware of change, we can see the signs earlier, so we're ahead of the wave. This gives us a distinct advantage in responding. The adaptability advantage. When the company I worked for merged with another, said Miguel, we suddenly had a new president. Up until then, ours had been run like a family-owned business, very casual, and people were kept on for years out of loyalty. This new person, who was very, very sharp, both in mind and in style, came in, and suddenly we were faced with demands of a very different corporate culture. We were held accountable for our quarterly bottom lines, and were expected to start showing up more at industry events to fly the company flag. Those who saw the waves of change on the horizon in subtle elements like appearance adapted quickly. No more jeans, no more leggings, no more sneakers. Those that sharpened up were the ones that survived the merger. Those that didn't, like one guy who scoffed at the idea of having to wear a tie, got lost in the flood. Change truth number 2. It's not personal. When I hear somebody sigh, "Life is hard," I am always tempted to ask, compared to what? Sidney J. Harris. My phone rang. It was a well-known speaker and author asking to work with me. Let's call him Sam. I've noticed over the last few years, he said, that things are changing. My speaking fees are beginning to go down, and my book sales are too. Fewer people are attending workshops. There are shifts happening, and I need to reposition myself in relationship to them to continue to make a living. Will you help me think that through? Instantly, I said yes, because Sam understood something crucial about change which will help him not waste time or precious emotional energy. It's not personal. He didn't blame himself for what was happening. He just observed it and realized he needed to respond in a new way. What's happening right now to most of us is not because we're bad or wrong or incompetent. It's because the world is transforming at breakneck speed, and each and every one of us must adapt to those changes as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?